One wrong turn was almost enough to get them both killed. Bruce and his son had no idea what was waiting for them farther down that road. Locals avoided that stretch whenever they knew the gang was out on it. A violent biker gang controlled that road. 6 motorcycles blocked the way ahead, long shadows stretching across the asphalt behind them in the late afternoon light. One biker walked straight toward his car. Bruce's son was sitting inside. Bruce got out, moving to cut him off. He wasn't fast enough. 5 more men closed in around him. The biker reached the door and grabbed the handle. Locked. He slammed his palm flat against the window, inches from the boy's face. "Leave the car," Bruce said. Bruce stepped sideways, cutting the angle, pulling the man's attention onto himself. The biker left the door and closed the gap fast, chest first, joining the other 5 now facing Bruce alone. Bruce stood still, hands loose at his sides. Behind the glass, the boy's breathing changed. His hand slid toward the door handle. Bruce caught it without turning his head. "Stay inside!" The lead biker stepped in front of him, close enough that their chests almost touched. Someone behind Bruce shifted his weight, blocking his only path back to the car. The lead biker reached out and put his hand flat on Bruce's shoulder. 7 seconds. That was all it was going to take. And every one of them was still smiling when it started. Then the hand didn't move. "Keys," the man said. "On the ground." Bruce didn't move for them. "You didn't hear me." "I heard you," Bruce said. He shifted his weight, slow, deliberate, and took half a step back toward the car door, testing whether the circle would let him retreat even that much. It didn't. 2 men closed the gap immediately, cutting the distance back to nothing. "Where do you think you're going?" the lead biker said. "Getting my son and leaving," Bruce said. "That's all I want." "That's not up to you anymore." "Everybody's got somewhere they'd rather be right now than here," Bruce said. "Except you 6. The leader's smile faded a fraction, replaced by something tighter. "Careful." Far down the highway, an engine rose faint on the wind. A truck still miles off, cutting through the heat shimmer, the low sun flashing off its windshield. One of the men noticed it and laughed. "Relax, nobody stops on this road." He was right. As the truck neared the bend, its brake lights flickered once, barely, before the driver seemed to catch himself. The engine surged instead, faster now, the driver's eyes fixed dead ahead, refusing to turn his head even a fraction toward the 6 bikes blocking the shoulder. It never slowed again. It passed on the far side and was gone around the bend before the sound of it had fully arrived. That wasn't a stranger avoiding trouble. That was someone who knew exactly whose bikes those were and exactly what happened to people who stopped. Whatever hope that moment offered, left with it. 100 yards back, a pickup sat stalled on the shoulder, broken down before Bruce and the bikers had ever arrived. Hidden behind it, a trucker named Walt Simmons had a clear view of everything. Bruce, the boy in the car, and the 6 men around them. He stayed low and didn't move. Walt had driven this road enough times to know better than to step out. Nobody interfered when these 6 stopped somebody. You kept your head down, you waited, and you hoped they finished before you had to explain why you hadn't helped. "Take the car," Bruce said. "Take whatever's in it. Let him go, and we're finished here." The lead biker studied him, almost amused. "We don't want your money. We want everybody who drives through here to hear what happens when somebody doesn't stop." That answer told Bruce there was nothing left to offer. Walt heard that part clearly, the wind carrying it straight back to where he crouched. Whatever this was, the small man hadn't started it, and he hadn't stopped trying to end it either. One of the younger riders shifted on his feet, glancing at the leader. "We could just take the car and go. Don't need all this." "You want to be the one who tells everybody we let a guy walk," the leader said, not even looking at him. "Sit down." 2 of the men peeled off and drifted wide, one toward the shoulder, one into the open desert behind the car, cutting off the last directions that weren't already blocked. Flat, cracked earth stretched for miles in every direction. No cover, nowhere to run that wouldn't leave the boy alone with strangers, or Bruce alone without him. And 2 more walked their bikes forward and laid them down across the road behind the car, boxing it in on every side. Metal scraped asphalt as the last bike settled. There was no direction left that wasn't already closed. "Check the car," the leader said to one of the others. "See what he's really got." The man popped the trunk, dug through a duffel bag, found nothing but clothes, a spare tire, a folded map with the wrong turn circled in pen. "Nothing," he said. "Guy's got nothing." "Doesn't matter," the leader said. "We're not doing this for what's in his trunk." The leader circled Bruce once, slow, studying him the way a man studies something he hasn't decided how to break yet. Bruce's eyes flicked toward the car for half a second, just long enough to find his son's face through the glass, long enough for the leader to notice. "Worried about the kid?" he said. "Smart. Should have thought about that before you drove through here." "I am thinking about him," Bruce said. "That's why you should let this go now." He laughed, short and ugly. "You hear this guy? Still giving orders." He turned to the others. "You believe this?" A couple of the men laughed along with him, loose and confident, the kind of laughter that comes from 6 men who have never once needed to doubt themselves on this stretch of road. Inside the car, the boy's hand found the horn and pressed it. Hard, 3 short bursts cutting through the silence. A man near the hood spun toward the sound, face twisting, and slammed his palm flat against the windshield glass, cutting the sound off with the threat of his whole body leaning into it. The boy flinched back, hands shaking, and didn't reach for the horn again. From behind his truck, Walt watched the man's palm hit the glass and felt his own stomach drop. He'd almost stood up right then. He didn't. What he did notice, without quite knowing why it mattered, was the small man in the gray shirt. 6 men had him boxed in, his kid trapped behind glass, and his shoulders hadn't climbed an inch toward his ears. Walt had seen plenty of men scared stiff in his life. This wasn't that. It looked more like patience, and patience was the last thing Walt expected to see on a man surrounded like this one was. "Tell him to stop that," the man said. "He's a kid," Bruce said. "He's scared." "He should be." The boy unbuckled and dropped low beneath the dash, arms over his head trying to disappear into the space between the seats. His breath came in short, uneven pulls, loud in the small space of the car. One of the men reached into his jacket and came out with a length of chain, wrapping it slow around his knuckles, link by link, never taking his eyes off Bruce. A second man, younger, stepped forward too fast, fists already raised. "Not yet!" the leader snapped, throwing an arm out to stop him. "Let him kneel first, then we start." His grip tightened on Bruce's shoulder. "On your knees, right here. Let everybody see it." Bruce didn't move. "Everybody who's ever stood where you're standing ended up down there eventually," the leader said. "Every single one. You won't be the first to make it different." "You heard me," the leader said louder now, playing to the men watching as much as to Bruce himself. "Everybody on this road's going to know what happens when somebody doesn't stop for us, starting with you." Without turning his head, Bruce spoke toward the car instead. "Almost done. Stay down." The boy, curled beneath the dash, didn't answer, but his shaking eased slightly at the sound of his father's voice. The leader spat on the asphalt near his boots. "You think I'm playing with you, old man?" "I think you haven't decided what happens next," Bruce said. "You still can. Last time I asked nice." "You don't want witnesses to this," Bruce said. "A dozen people saw us stop for gas an hour ago. They'll remember the car." The leader's face flickered, calculation instead of certainty, then hardened again. "Nobody's going to connect some tourist's car to 6 guys on a road nobody drives," he said. "Nice try, though." Behind the car, another man crouched at the passenger door, working a flat piece of metal into the seam above the lock, twisting it slowly back and forth. The boy scrambled across the seat as far from the glass as the small space allowed. "Leave him," Bruce said, voice flat now, final. The metal caught. The lock began to give. Bruce moved before he decided to, one step toward the car, pure instinct, and it opened his back to the men still behind him. The leader caught the movement and grinned, reading it wrong. To him, it looked like a man finally folding, drifting toward the car to hand something over, to give up, to do anything but stand there anymore. "There it is," he said, almost warm, waving the others back half a step like the show was over. "Knew you'd come around." And he reached out and closed his hand around Bruce's shoulder, casual now instead of threatening, the grip of a man who believed he'd already won. For half a second, nobody moved. 6 men, one road, the only sound the wind dragging grit across asphalt and the boys breathing through the glass. Bruce's eyes swept the circle once, measuring distance, weight, the order they'd have to come at him. Walt stopped breathing behind his truck. Whatever was about to happen, he had the only clear view of it on the entire highway. The hand on his shoulder tightened. This time, it wasn't a test. 7 seconds. The man's grip pressed down, testing him one last time, waiting for the flinch that always came. Bruce didn't give him one. That was the first wrong thing. The second wrong thing came half a second later, when the leader's grip tightened out of instinct, and Bruce's hand came up, caught his wrist, and turned it hard against the joint. His shoulder rotated with it before his brain understood why. His balance broke before his mind could correct it. He went down hard, face first, into the asphalt, the impact knocking the air out of him. 1 second gone. The man near the car lunged forward, but Bruce was already moving, closing the distance before the man reached full speed. A palm to the chest, sharp and flat, sent him stumbling backward into the man beside him, both of them tangled at the knees. 2 seconds gone. The one with the chain swung wide, metal singing through the air. Bruce stepped inside the arc before it landed, drove an elbow into his ribs. The chain hit the asphalt with a hard clatter, and so did the man holding it, a short grunt escaping him as the wind left his lungs. 3 seconds. A fourth man came in low, trying to take his legs out. Bruce's knee met his shoulder first, timed perfectly, the impact stopping him mid-stride, like he'd run into a wall. 4 seconds. The fifth man hesitated, watching 4 of his friends fail in front of him in the space of a breath. That hesitation cost him everything. 1 strike to the jaw, and his legs folded under him, boneless. 5 seconds. The 6th man broke and ran, boots slapping asphalt, back toward his bike, never touched, never touching Bruce either. 6 seconds. Behind his truck, Walt would later say he never actually saw 4 men go down. He saw the moment before, and then he saw the moment after, and the 7 seconds in between didn't exist for him the way normal time did. "I've replayed it 100 times," he said once. "I still couldn't tell you the order it happened in." The leader was still on the ground, pushing himself up on one arm, blood on his lips, staring at Bruce like the road itself had turned against him. 7 seconds. It was over. 4 men down. 1 backing away with his ribs on fire, 1 already gone, straddling his bike, hands shaking too hard to find the ignition. For a moment, nobody on that road moved at all. The wind kept dragging grit across the asphalt, the only sound left after 7 seconds that had rearranged everything. The boy watched through the windshield, hand still on the door handle, not moving. Bruce turned back toward the car. His breathing hadn't changed. Behind him, the man with the ribs on fire took 1 step toward a bike, hand reaching for something strapped near the seat. The leader, still on the ground, barked a single word. "Don't!" The man froze, hand hovering, then lowered it slowly and stepped back. Bruce opened the door. "You okay?" The boy nodded, too fast, still watching the men behind his father. "Stay right there," Bruce said. "Not yet." Because 4 men down and 1 running wasn't the same as everyone accepting it was finished. The man who'd taken the elbow to the ribs was already back on his feet, jaw tight, 1 hand pressed to his side. He looked at the leader, still on the ground. He looked at Bruce, standing calm beside the car door, like nothing at all had happened. "We're not just going to let him walk," the man said. "Not after that. Not in front of everybody." He took another step, close enough that Bruce shifted his weight, just slightly, the same quiet readiness that had put 4 men on the ground already. The man stopped. His confidence, so loud 30 seconds earlier, suddenly had nowhere to stand. The younger rider, the one who'd suggested letting Bruce go before any of this started, stayed back near his bike, watching 4 of his friends struggle to stand. "Get up!" the first man said to the leader. Not a question. An order dressed up as concern, the kind that comes from someone who needs their leader standing again before the moment slips any further out of his hands. The leader got up slowly, wiping blood from his mouth with the back of his hand, eyes locked on Bruce the entire time. His hand drifted toward his belt, hesitated, then dropped back to his side. His voice, when it came, didn't carry the way it had a minute ago. 6 years of never once needing to raise it. And now it came out thinner than he meant it to. "Who are you?" he said. Bruce didn't answer. The man who'd wanted to keep fighting stepped closer, studying Bruce's face now instead of his stance, something shifting behind his eyes. "Wait," he said slowly. "I know that face." Nobody moved. "I saw him. In the paper back home. Some kind of fighter. Movies." He pointed, almost accusing. "That's Bruce Lee." The name landed in the middle of the road like something dropped from a height. For a second, none of them said anything at all. Even the wind seemed to hold still. "You sure?" the leader said. "I'm sure. My sister dragged me to one of his films last year. Same face, same everything." The leader's eyes moved from the man's face to Bruce's, searching for a reason it wasn't true. He didn't find one. It explained the balance break, the elbow, the single strike that had put a grown man down cold in under a second, trained into that body over years, the same patient way the leader had trained his own hands to grip a throttle without thinking. "Bruce Lee," the leader repeated, quiet now, testing the weight of it. He looked at Bruce like he was seeing him for the first time, not the small, quiet man from a moment ago, but something else entirely, and something he'd only ever seen flickering on a screen. "Doesn't change what happened," Bruce said. "Just means you know why." The man with the chain, still on the ground, laughed once, short and humorless, not at Bruce, but at himself, at all of them. 6 men who'd spent 6 years being the most dangerous thing on this road, and had just found out in 7 seconds exactly where they ranked. "We're not doing this," the leader said. Not to Bruce, to his own men. "He put 4 of us down," the man who'd wanted to keep fighting said. "We're just going to let that go?" "Look at him," the leader said. "You want to be the next one on the ground? Go ahead." Nobody went ahead. The man with the chain, still sitting on the asphalt where he'd landed, spoke up, voice tight with pain. "Man's right. I felt what that was. Ain't nobody here walking through that twice." That settled it. One by one, the ones still standing eased back half a step, the fight visibly draining out of shoulders that had been squared for a real 130 seconds earlier. All but one. The man who'd taken the elbow to the ribs still hadn't moved back, jaw working, looking at Bruce like a debt he hadn't decided whether to collect. "Easy," the leader said, softer now. "It's finished." "Says who?" "Says the 6 of us standing here, instead of 1. His voice hardened. "Count how many of us are still on our feet clean. Now think hard about being the 7th name on that list." The man's jaw tightened further. Then his eyes found Bruce's, found the same stillness that had been there since the first hand landed on his shoulder. And something in him finally understood. There was nothing to win here. He stepped back. The leader looked back at Bruce, something different in his face now than the confidence that had opened this whole thing. Not quite fear. Something closer to recognition, the specific kind that comes from finally understanding exactly how outmatched you've been the entire time. "Get in your car," he said. "Take your kid. Go!" Bruce didn't move right away. He watched the 6 of them, gauging whether the words matched what was actually going to happen next. The chain was still on the asphalt. Nobody reached for it. "Go," the leader said again, quieter. Bruce opened the driver's door. "Get in the back," he told his son. "We're leaving." He got in, started the engine, and glanced once in the mirror. 6 men stood scattered across the road behind him, some upright, some still finding their footing, all of them watching the car instead of each other. Bruce eased forward, slow at first, giving them every chance to change their minds. Nobody blocked the way this time. The men who could still stand stepped aside without being told, and the ones who couldn't just watched from the ground. The car rolled past the fallen chain, past the boxed-in bike still lying where they'd been dropped, and picked up speed toward the bend in the road. In the mirror, the six men shrank smaller and smaller against the desert until the last motorcycle disappeared from view and there was nothing behind the car but empty highway and heat shimmering off the asphalt. Walt waited until the black car was long gone and the six bikes had ridden off the other way before he came out from behind his truck, hands still shaking harder than they had over the dead wheel bearing. He got his rig running an hour later and drove straight to the next town, where he told a mechanic what he'd seen, still not fully believing his own description of it. Word spread from there, the way it does. By the time it reached anyone who hadn't been on that road, it had already passed through Walt's own retelling a dozen times, and even he couldn't say for certain he had the 7 seconds exactly right anymore. He only knew what he'd started with. 4 men down, 1 gone, and a boy who never had to find out what almost happened to him. People who drove that stretch after that summer said the gang still rode it, still stopped a car now and then, but something about it had changed. The leader who'd once made everybody kneel stopped asking anyone to. Nobody ever heard him raise his voice the same way again. Nobody knew why. Only 6 men on that road actually did. The boy didn't speak for a long time. Bruce didn't push him to. 40 minutes later, the gas station lights of the next town flickered on against a sky just starting to purple at the edges. Bruce pulled in, cut the engine, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. Moths circled the single light above the pumps. Somewhere inside, a radio played too quietly to make out the words. It was the most ordinary place either of them had been in hours, and neither of them moved to get out just yet. He turned in his seat and looked at his son properly for the first time since the highway, checking his face, his hands, making sure nothing had happened that he hadn't seen. The boy's knuckles were still white where he'd gripped the edge of the seat, but his breathing had started to slow. "Dad," the boy said finally, "were you scared?" Bruce thought about it before he answered, the way he answered most things his son asked him. "I was ready," he said. "That's different." "How do you know the difference?" "Scared means you don't know what you'll do. I knew." The boy didn't ask anything else that evening, but he remembered the answer for the rest of his life, long after he'd forgotten the exact color of the car or the exact shade of the desert sky that afternoon. He remembered something else, too, something he never quite found words for as a kid. His father had never once raised his voice to end it. 6 men had done all the shouting that day, and none of it had mattered at all. Somewhere behind them, 6 men were still standing in the middle of an empty road, finding out what it felt like to be the ones who got left there. One wrong turn had put them on that road. It was almost enough to get them both killed. It wasn't, because 7 seconds after 6 men decided a small, quiet stranger and his son belonged to them, they found out exactly whose road it had really been the whole time.